Hello, Wild here. Today I'm continuing my Lonely Turret 2 devlog I started last week. I was so happy to see there was interest and plan to keep this series going until I release the game. If you didn't see the first devlog, I recommend you watch it first, as it explains the game better than this video is going to, which is going to focus mostly on explaining the attachments, as I said in the last week. Without further ado, let's get started. The attachment system in the game is quite similar to the original. You can put attachments onto the 8 nodes your turret has and use them to defend against enemies. While you're limited to 8, you can replace them over time as you see fit with other attachments, but you will lose whatever was on it before. Attaching one onto an existing attachment of the same type will level it up, and you can get them all the way to level 10 that way, at least in this game. In the original, you could only go to 5. While some attachments have special buffs when leveled up, the standard buff is that leveling up gives it less cooldown. The cooldown makes them shoot as fast as though there were that many of that attachment stacked. For example, a level 1 gunner might shoot 1 bullet per second, and a level 5 will shoot 1 every 5th of a second, while a level 10 will shoot every 10th of a second, etc. There's also a new addition to the sequel that makes customization much easier. While in the upgrade menu, before you use your upgrade, you are able to move around your attachments. You can use this to move them to an empty node or even to level them up by merging them. I think this addition will make transitioning into the late game much easier, as you can merge duplicate attachments, giving you space for some new fun attachments, while not dampening your turret's power level. This took so much time to get working under the hood. The system I already implemented last week was already so complicated, but when I heard a suggestion from one of my dev testers to do this kind of implementation, I just had to do it. Also, by merging weapons, you can get them all the way to level 16. There were no colors left in the palette I made, so level 16 is represented by turning the attachment pitch black and replacing the number with the word NULL. You might also notice in this clip I'm making use of a new debug menu. I spent a long time working on this, and it's going to make recording clips for this devlog a lot easier, as I can access any upgrade as I need. With all of that, let's get into the individual attachments. First up, let's go over some that just shoot simple generic bullets. The gunner is your first weapon you start with in level 1, and it's available in all levels from the start. It shoots what I would call a generic bullet every second by default, and the gunner tends to be the reference point that most weapons use for power level. A generic bullet has the exact damage needed to kill a level 1 rounder or 2 level 1 darts. Speaking of, this is the twins. The twins are the first of what I will call dual attachments. Dual attachments tend to have 2 heads, each one with a speed that tends to be slower than the original, but together they are faster than the original. For example, the twins, each head shoots every 1.5 seconds compared to the gunner's every 1 second. These two together add up to shooting every 0.75 seconds because they're timed so that they take turns. This makes the twins considerably better than the gunner, and this is okay because they're locked behind 500 kills, at least on the first level, and by then you've unlocked plenty of interesting options and already killed 2 bosses. Or at least started the second boss. I found that once you get to a certain point, aiming becomes less of a priority, and you tend to only focus on aiming with 1 or 2 of your weapons, while the rest are used as some kind of crowd control. The last of these shooting weapons that use generic bullets would be the triple. The triple shoots out 3 generic bullets every 2.5 seconds, all together in one group, with the ones on the left and the right moving out a little bit as they go. While this might seem better than the gunner, the outer bullets aren't easy to aim, and because they all shoot at once, you can't get too much speed out of them. Next up, let's look at the orbiting family. The Orbiter and Orbittal are great weapons for late game, as well as great options in the beginning because of that. They shoot out bullets that spiral out to the right and left respectively, and do a great job of dealing with slow enemies that can run into the spiraling bullets multiple times as they try to approach you. The orbiting bullets have the same stats as generic bullets, but because their properties, I'm not counting them as generic. And before I get comments asking about the spelling, yes, the extra T is intentional. Orbiter is unlocked right away, but unlike the first game, the Orbital doesn't unlock until later at 250 kills, right when the first boss spawns. Also, whenever I mention these requirements, keep in mind that these are only for level 1 and are subject to change as well. Different levels will have different weapon pools and requirements for each one. And while I'm listing all of these now, a lot of them aren't in a final spot. This is just where they are during development. The last in the orbiting family is the Orbittrix. While the twins are two of the same weapon, the Orbittrix is a combination of both the Orbiter and Orbital, with each shooting every 3 seconds opposed to 2. These are really good attachments, but you can't unlock them until 1000 kills. The orbiting bullets are a great crutch for level 1, and in the original they were probably the best form of crowd control in most levels. Next up, let's look at a few attachments that make use of mini bullets. The Gattler shoots a mini bullet every 1/5 of a second. These mini bullets are 3 times as fast as generic bullets, but only deal a quarter of the damage, and of course are a bit smaller, roughly half the size of a generic bullet. This is also the first shooting attachment with inaccuracy. In the Gattler's case, it can be off up to 10 degrees. The Gattler is first unlocked at 250 kills in level 1, as it is so far. After that, we have our first new weapon for Lonely Turret 2. Trust me, there are a lot of new weapons, but I'm gonna get to them later, because right now there's still a lot of repeats from the last game that I feel like I should go over first. It's getting to the point where I'm writing the script and worried this video might be very long. Speaking of, if you made it this far, why don't you leave a like? Really helps other people find the video, and this channel is small enough I can really use the publicity. If you want to see more devlogs for Lonely Turret 2, you should also subscribe, as it'll increase the odds of you seeing the next video when it comes out. Anyways, shameless promotion out of the way, these are the Mini-Gattlers. The Mini-Gattlers are new in the line of dual weapons, and like the Gattlers, they shoot out a spray of mini-bullets. Each side shoots out a mini-bullet every 0.3 seconds, and as of right now they unlock at 750 kills on level 1, but I might save them for another level. For the last of the mini-bullets, this one's a bit different. The Firework is a weapon that shoots splitting bullets. This essentially means it shoots out what seems to be a generic bullet, but they will explode into different bullets when they either make it to a certain point in time, usually 1.25 seconds, or whenever they hit an enemy. In the Firework's case, they shoot out a firework splitting bullet every 2 seconds that explodes into 16 mini bullets, all going in different directions. These Firework bullets have the same stats as generic bullets. Now, let's look at some weapons that get into tracking. There are a lot of stats for these, but I'll try to give the basics, because it can get a little complicated. The tracker from the original Lonely Turret has received a complete makeover, and now's the Homer. The Homer shoots homing bullets shaped like rockets, much like itself, every 2 seconds. These homing bullets can lock onto enemies and speed up to catch them. In terms of damage and speed before they lock on, they might as well be generic bullets. But it's also worth mentioning that these despawn after 8 seconds. This keeps them from clogging the screen after they hit an enemy, which can be really annoying to look at as they spin out of control all around you, jumping from enemy to enemy as another one steals their kill. Next up are the Seekers, which are just a pair of homers. These were also in the original, and they shoot every 3 seconds instead of 2, so the rates line up with the other dual shooting attachments. Lastly, for the category of tracking weapons, though not the last tracking weapon, is the Rocketeer. The Rocketeer is essentially a mix of the Homer and Firework, shooting a homing firework bullet every 3 seconds. I had to write an entirely new script just for this one, just because of how it worked. It was very complicated, and my script for splitting bullets didn't really work well with my script for homing bullets. So they had to get their own. Okay, now I promise 3 more boring ones before we get to the new and fun ones. Let's look at the Cannon family. The Cannon shoots out a bigger bullet with slower speeds but higher damage than generic bullets. The speed is also really nice for hitting enemies with, but it does have 5 degrees of inaccuracy. There is the dual version, the Cannoneers, which shoot every 3 seconds. I think it's also important to note here that a bullet will keep going if it doesn't deal all of its damage to an enemy. Because of this, a single big bullet can kill 2 level 1 rounders and a level 1 dart before breaking, if lined up properly. But you don't need to line up. This is where Billy comes in. Billy is a cannon that shoots homing big bullets. They are about what you expect, but they can go through a lot of enemies because of their massive damage. Because of this, Billy has a longer cooldown of 4 seconds per big tracking bullet. But it's also worth mentioning that all of these were in the original, but they received name changes or texture changes. For example, Billy used to be the Rocketeer, but now Rocketeers are used for the tracking Firework bullet thing. I don't remember what I called it in the original. Now, let's get into some non-shooting attachments. The Mason is an attachment that constructs walls for you every 5 seconds. These walls will despawn after 6 seconds, but they can take on quite a bit of damage before breaking. Now, the cooldown doesn't go down for the Mason when leveling up, so what does leveling do? Well, instead of increasing the Mason itself, it increases the wall stats. The size, durability, and despawn time rises with each level instead. The Mason was called the Builder in the original, but since it only builds walls, I decided to give it a more fitting name, especially since we have a brand new attachment that builds things this time, the Engineer. The Engineer builds a sentry that can aim and shoot for you. It has a gunner on it, though it doesn't shoot generic bullets, instead slightly darker sentry bullets that have a teeny bit of tracking, but other than that, might as well be generic. The Engineer makes a sentry every 10 seconds, and they always last 10 seconds. When upgrading the Engineer, the sentry's weapon levels up instead, as well as the durability as the sentry, just like the wall, as it will be broken once it sustains enough damage. Next up, let's look at a brand new kind of attachment, sabers. These blades can take a good amount of damage before you need to recharge them. The saber's length, durability, and recharge speed depend on its level. Right now, these can be unlocked straight out of the gate, and work great in empty slots, as you can slash at enemies who get too close that you can't shoot in time. When you later need to fill those slots, you can merge all your sabers into one bigger, stronger blade. Another kind of saber is the spinner. The spinner works the same as the saber, but it spins. Their spinning speed goes up as well when you level it up, but it still has the same stats and benefits of the saber, other than slightly longer recharge time. Now let's look at gas. Gas is another new kind of projectile used by weapons in Lonely Turret 2. Rather than dealing a specific amount of damage to an enemy and then being used up, gas deals damage over time to all enemies inside of it. Smoke does have a small downside of not staying on screen for too long, as it tends to disperse in 5 seconds, but it's great for killing swarmers and bosses. The fogger is your simplest way to make use of gas, creating one slow-moving gas each second. Double it up, and you get the smokers, with each head shooting gas every 1.5 seconds. Just like bullets have the triple, smoke also has the tri-fogger, which sprays 3 fog every 2.5 seconds. There are also 2 strange fog weapons that are very fun to deal with big incoming groups. The bubbler, for example, shoots out a bubble bullet that will pop into fast and small smokes. Meanwhile, the Fumigator shoots out a smoke bomb that'll turn into 5 very slow and big smoke, which can normally kill just about anything it hits, as the 5 will cover whoever they hit perfectly, dealing 5 times the damage. These are great against bosses, as they can deal a lot of damage and even take out incoming enemies spawned in by the boss. As for some more interesting weapons, we have the force weapons. Right now there are only some with projectiles that pull enemies in, but in the future there will be some that push as well. I didn't have time to make every attachment for this video. Every 3 seconds, the twister shoots out twisters that will pull enemies towards them and trap them, dealing a small amount of damage per second in the process until they despawn. This isn't enough to kill all enemies, but it can whittle them down and keep them far away from you, especially since these are available right from the get-go. The NULL, on the other hand, summons black holes that also pull enemies in, but with a much higher damage per second, and with much more of a pull radius and power. But they only shoot them every 10 seconds, compared to the Twister's 3. Now, as I mentioned before, most weapons will decrease their cooldown when leveling up, but there are also the spread weapons, which instead increase their projectile speed. For now, there's the spreader and the smoke screen, which shoot out a spread of generic bullets and smoke, respectively. Both of these shoot one spread every 1.5 seconds, with level 1 spread always having 2 projectiles and each level increasing it by 1. Okay, almost finished. Now there's just 3 left that don't fit into any categories. First up is the blaster. The blaster shoots very fast bullets every second that are slightly longer and thinner than generic bullets, but still deal the same amount of damage. The ninja, on the other hand, shoots out a shuriken every second, which is twice as fast as the generic bullet, but deals the same damage. Depending on your rotation when it fires, it can do something different. For example, if you're standing still, it'll just shoot straight. But if you're spinning, it'll spin in the same direction and speed that you were spinning when you shot it out. This means with more rotation speed, the ninja becomes a much more powerful tool. Lastly, the Shockwave. The Shockwave is a weapon that shoots out growing damage per second waves every second in the direction it shoots. The damage per second is stronger than the Twister, but weaker than the Fog, and the growth rate, while not overpowered, definitely helps it. If you noticed, a lot of the later attachments I mentioned don't have a set unlock point. This is because most of these aren't planned to be in level 1. I actually wasn't able to code all these in time, and there's still quite a few from the original that I have to still adapt. Because of this, I thought 32 weapons would be a good stopping point for now. Just like last time, if you want to see more of these, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, as it increases your chance of seeing when the next devlog comes out. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make one next week, but I'll definitely try. Take care, and see you later. This is Wild, signing off.